Now starting off with the build quality of the Galaxy Note 3, here we have the Galaxy Note 2 right beside it, and I've also got a Galaxy S4 to look at. Now, when the Galaxy Note 2 came out, people were still not used to gigantic, ginormous phones like both of these guys, and the size of the Galaxy Note 2 was perceived as pretty extreme. Now, while the Galaxy Note 3 is just a little bit taller than the Galaxy Note 2, it's definitely not as wide, and it's just a hair thinner as well. So despite the size, this does feel to be quite a thin device. It is just a hair thicker than the Galaxy S4, but the overall size is manageable. And since these huge phones are pretty much all the rage these days, I don't think that anyone's gonna care what you look like while holding this up to your ear. Instead of, oh my gosh, ooh, that's so huge, people are like, ooh, can I see it? So it's a very different perception these days, and I'm happy because I love huge displays. Here you can definitely see the perspective sizes. Now casting the Note 2 aside, I think that the Galaxy S4 looks a lot like the Galaxy Note 3, except for it has a little bit rounded corners. Lining them up here, you can see a phone that has a 5-inch display versus a 5.7-inch display. I will be getting into the display quite a bit, but you can see this is such a big difference. These guys are both 1080p. This has a pixel density of 441 pixels per inch versus 386 pixels per inch. It's the exact same pixel arrangement, the exact same pixel matrix. You've got the exact same amount of pixels between both of these displays, it's just that this one is now bigger and doesn't look as dense. But we will get into that in a little bit. Now between these three devices, one of the best upgrades and one of the most simple upgrades that I really like is this back cover. On the Galaxy Note 2 and on the S4, they both have these plastic back covers, and for me they always got grimy, slimy, and they were pretty slippery. So when they came out with this faux leather type back cover, I was very happy with this. I love how this feels. Admittedly, the black version does feel a lot nicer than the white one. It has more of a TPU type feeling, a thermoplastic polyurethane, where the white version simply just feels like a textured matte type plastic on the back. So this one certainly does feel like an emulated faux leather. For me, it's a lot more grippy in hand, and it just does something so simple to feel more premium, especially because they still have clung to that plastic-like build. It still catches fingerprints pretty easily, as you can see. It does clean up quite nicely though, but it does take a few swipes to get the fingerprints off due to the type of texture. But if you go for the black version, finally at least it feels more of a premium device. Speaking of plastic, the sides are indeed plastic. One thing that I'm not liking so much, you can see that there's a lot of grime and finger dirt or oils that are stuck in these ridges here. Let's see if you can see what I'm talking about. Now Samsung has included these ridges because they say that it's supposed to look like a book, like a journal, like a notebook, and arguably it gives it more of a grippy feeling, but it's kind of gross. I find myself always cleaning the phone, trying to get the muck and guck out of these little ridges here. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I preferred the smoother finish that we had on the Galaxy Note 2. It was a lot easier to clean, and for me didn't look so grimy. Still, even though it's plastic, it does have a nice feel to it. It does not feel cheap, it does not feel like it creaks in hand. It's very, very sturdy. My only complaint is that we have this USB 3.0 port at the bottom, and it's quite big. If you look at this here, the plastic is a little bit sharp, so if you're somebody who holds your phone like this at the bottom with your pinky, I have tended to scratch myself a little bit. But other than that, this does feel very, very nice, very solid in hand, and this is one of my favorite devices to hold in the hand. There's just something about it. I love that back cover, I love the size, I love the weight, it's very, very light. And without a case, I don't have any trouble with this guy in my pocket, even though I have very shallow pockets because I'm a girl. But I don't think that you guys out there are going to have any trouble with fitting this guy in your jeans. Now looking around the phone, here we have a volume rocker. We've also got our power button on the other side. It's placed just where I like it. It's what I like about Galaxy phones. That button is very easily reachable, and so is the volume rocker. What Samsung needs to fix with some kind of a firmware update is what's going on with the power button. There is a little bit of a lag. I don't know if I can make it happen now, but sometimes when I click on that power button, it doesn't respond the first time I click it, or it will take a couple of seconds to turn on or off. So I don't know what that's about, but I'm sure that Samsung can fix that. On the front, we have our receiver. We have a notification LED right here. We've got our proximity sensor that also works for all the hand motions. We've got a 2 megapixel front-facing camera. Ooh, on the bottom, one thing I should have mentioned along with this feeling a little bit sharp because of its size is that these buttons don't lay flat inside the phone. They protrude just a little bit, and they don't lay straight either. Every single Galaxy Note 3 that I have seen thus far have this wobbling button that doesn't sit straight. So if you go and try to replace it, it's probably pointless, as all of them you find are going to have this issue. It's been very well documented. I can't find anybody not complaining about it. If you don't have this problem, please let me know and tell me which version of the phone it is. Unlike the Galaxy Note 2, which had a button that laid pretty nice and flat inside of its own chassis, it fit very well. It also had this ring inside that kept it in place, but this little jobber does indeed protrude, and you can see how it just likes to flop around right here. There's nothing keeping it to stay straight. I just call this poor design, and I don't think this is something they can fix. On the top here, we have an IR blaster, which works fabulously. I've been using this as my controller all week long because my family has lost all the remote controls. I don't know how, so we can't watch The Big Bang Theory without me going up and changing to the next episode, and I can say this is a very awesome inclusion. We have a microphone right here, standard headphone jack. On the bottom we have another microphone. We've got this USB 3.0 port that only works with Windows. I cannot get it working on my Mac. I'm not seeing higher transfer speeds on the Mac, and it is definitely not charging faster on my Mac. So lucky you, Windows people. We've also got a single speaker grill at the bottom. Not stereo speakers! What is wrong with you, Samsung? 5.7 inches, and all we get is this dingy, tinny, very thin sounding speaker on the bottom. It is not comparable to the Galaxy Note 2 speaker in any way. I'm glad that at least it gets loud, but a lot of people complain that it just sounds terrible. Notifications don't sound full. It's an annoyance, and it wasn't a very good choice by Samsung. Next to that, we have our S Pen. You can slide it in either direction. I personally never had trouble with the S Pen that needed to go in one direction. It felt very reassuring and in place, but still it's a nice design decision. On the back here we have a 13 megapixel camera with our single LED flash. I will definitely be getting into depth with this camera. Pulling off this back cover, which does feel very similar to every other plastic cover once you've taken it off. We've got our 3200 milliamp hour battery, and here we have it next to the Galaxy Note 2's, which is only 100 milliamp hours less, 3100 milliamp hours. Some people ask me, will I be able to use the Note 3 battery inside the Note 2 or the Note 2 battery inside the Note 3? No, you can't use the Galaxy Note 2 battery inside of the Note 3, and definitely no, you can't use the Note 3 battery inside of the Note 2. As for quick perceptions on battery life, it just reminds me a lot of the Galaxy S4. I will get more into that in a little bit with some proof. Underneath here we have a micro SD card slot and a place for our SIM card. These are no longer spring loaded. I find it a little difficult to remove the cards. I don't like how this is designed. If you have moist fingers, you're probably going to have trouble getting out your SIM card. But alongside this micro SD card slot, we have finally a base model with 32 gigabytes of internal storage. Around 25 gigabytes is actually usable, so there's a lot to love about this phone. Now getting into the display, it is 5.7 inches over the 5.5 inches that we had on the Galaxy Note 2. For me, this jump upwards does make quite a bit of a difference. My sweet spot for a display is somewhere between 6.4 inches to 7 inches. I find that 5.7 inches is very great for viewing media on. I'm not left with feeling like I did on the Galaxy S4 where I wanted more screen real estate. I think that a lot of people might end up getting a Galaxy Note 3 and using this solely as a tablet rather than having a tablet and a Galaxy Note 3. So I am definitely appreciating the size of this display. If any of you have seen the mini review that I put out about a week ago, I was not so happy about the pixel density. It's 386 pixels per inch versus the 441 pixels per inch that we have on the Galaxy S4. What I had done to examine the display is I took my camera and I went very, very close on a pixel level so that you could see for yourself what the density looked like on the Galaxy Note 3 versus something like the Galaxy Note 2 and even the Xperia Z Ultra, which has a 6.4 inch display and a different type of arrangement for the pixels. For me, what I noticed compared to the Galaxy S4 is that this doesn't feel as sharp as the Galaxy S4. In a lot of places I can't notice that this does have a lower pixel density than the Galaxy S4, but the places where I do realize it most are on reds, borders, and texts. I can see that there are some black spaces in between, and I'm not holding it incredibly close to my face either, so my advice for some people is if you really don't like pentile-like arrangements, this is not pentile in a classical sense, but just like pentile, it only has 2 subpixels per pixel. Every subpixel is supposed to have 3, so I think that this causes things like reds, borders, and text to look a little bit lower density than other parts of the display. Some people will mind this, some people won't. At first, I couldn't stand it, honestly. I was so peeved, so ticked off, because I loved the display on the Galaxy S4. While I could tell with the Galaxy S4 that this wasn't like something like the HTC One as far as density, I was happy though that it did appear to be 1080p, but over time my eyes have adjusted to looking at this display. The only times that I really do notice it now that it looks lower density than something that does have a 3 subpixel per pixel type of arrangement is when I pick something up like the HTC One or even my 6.4-inch Xperia Z Ultra. But even I have to admit that yes, this is a nice display. In my last video, people were really upset saying that I was saying that this is a terrible display. It's not a terrible display. It's just a bummer that they used that same subpixel matrix that they had with the Galaxy S4, and since it has the exact same amount of pixels as these are both 1080p displays, 1080 by 1920, all they've done is they've taken those same amount of pixels and made a bigger display. So yes, of course, it's not going to have as high of a pixel density. And for somebody like me who doesn't like pentile, I was quite sensitive to it. But no, this is not a bad display. Now we're going to be taking a look at some measurements from a couple of different modes so that we can see what's going on with the calibration and the behavior of this display. In order to do this, I use a colorimeter, and I've also been using Super Curio's new software, Voodoo Colorimeter. Thank you for letting me use this. But basically it lets you run automated measurements, and it takes them in high definition as well, so I am now getting a better idea of what's going on with many more points of measurement. To start off with, we will look at brightness. If you are just using manual brightness at 100%, it looks like it gets a little bit higher than 400 nits, but when you turn on automatic brightness, it looks like it gets much brighter, about 200 nits brighter. Another thing that people are reporting is that this device seems to have thermal throttling for the brightness, so if the device gets too hot, then the max brightness is going to be limited. It's not really something that I have run into yet. Some people are getting notifications, and others are just seeing the brightness really bouncing about. Although this phone also has dynamic contrast, so it makes me wonder if that's what they're actually seeing. And this phone also has an auto-adjust screen tone mode, which tends to adjust brightness and contrast depending on what you're looking at. But I myself have not gotten the thermal throttling notification yet, but some people are seeing it, and it does indeed throttle. There are 2 display modes that I really want to look at. I want to look at the standard mode and also the movie mode. The other 2 modes drive me a little bit nuts. Between all 4 modes, I see pretty much the same basic behavior. The first image that I am looking at is the CIE diagram of standard mode. What you can see here is a white outline of a triangle, and inside is a smaller triangle. These triangles represent a range of colors or a color space or gamut. So you can see that the white triangle extends pretty far beyond the inner black one. This means that it has a very wide range of colors. So not only do we have a very wide range of colors on this display because it is AMOLED, but I can also see that Samsung is sadly oversaturating as well. All these colored dots that you see here are supposed to be evenly spaced, and I can see, especially in magenta and some in red and blue, that they are compressing the saturations a little bit or oversaturating. That's a big no-no. You should never oversaturate something that already has a wider gamut. You just end up getting neon-looking colors, and some colors can tend to not look right. I'm also seeing that between all modes on this display, the gamma is a little bit too high. The average gamma for standard mode is about 2.49, and that's a little bit high because this content is sRGB content. When I'm talking about sRGB content, I mean all the range of colors that you are seeing in the operating system of Android, and games that are in Android, and even internet content. If you have a gamma that is higher than what you're supposed to have, some of the colors end up being a little bit too dark or looking too dark for what they're supposed to be. Although personally to me, it's not too bad on the Note 3. It was also the same on the Note 2. So if you went from the Note 2 to the Note 3, you're not going to see any difference here or notice anything weird. Also, when you have higher gamma, colors can tend to look even more saturated because when you raise gamma, also the saturation increases as well. So Samsung likes to do their little tricks and things. I don't exactly understand their reasoning. It doesn't look horrible, but I can tell that it's not quite right. The next image that I am looking at is looking at the RGB levels, or the red, green, and blue levels of the display. All of these levels are supposed to be even. If they're not even, you get some color deviations, or you can get some interesting color casts. With this display, I do see some color deviations. Where I see it most affecting certain things like movies is with skin tones. I'm noticing that skin tones don't have enough red, and they look kind of bluish and greenish at times. Do I think a lot of people are going to notice this and have any clue what I'm talking about? No, but my job is to talk about the accuracy, and no, standard mode really isn't accurate, and neither are any of the other modes. Now, the people who are not happy about the punchy colors of AMOLED have heard to no end about the movie mode that Samsung has as well. Right now I am looking at the color temperature of the standard mode. You can see it's around 7,500 Kelvin, so that's a white point that's going a little bit more towards the cool side. The nice thing about movie mode is that the color temperature drops to being a little bit warmer, around 6,500 K, which is actually the ideal because it's neutral. It doesn't look too cool and it doesn't look too warm for the whites. So that is one plus of movie mode. But as far as the accuracy of movie mode, I want to get real with you here. What we're looking at is the CIE diagram of movie mode, and you can see for magenta and green that there is a curve in the colors. So that means as the saturation increases, the actual hue of that color changes as well, and that's not something that's always so nice. So looking at this just right here, no, we can't say that this is accurate. What I can say about this mode is that it gives an interesting effect, especially in movies. When you're using movie mode, I recommend only using it really in movies. What you can see here are the colored dots that are around the periphery of the triangle, but on the inside you can see that there are some gaps. So what they're doing is they're trying to take the colors and undersaturate them to be more like they're supposed to be, around sRGB. That way the colors don't look oversaturated. Now while this can look pretty decent in movies if you don't want to see really punchy colors, the implementation here isn't so good for everything, because imagine, during movies you are rarely going to see 100% of the saturation, you're rarely ever going to see 100% blue, you're very rarely ever going to see 100% reds, greens. Pretty much think about that for all the colors. Where I find this mode unacceptable is inside of the UI or when playing games, because when you are inside of the UI, TouchWiz, or playing games, you do a lot of the time see the maximum color. So you'll see greens that are the maximum green, you'll see blues that are the maximum blue, and then you'll end up seeing some colors that are undersaturated. So you end up seeing a whole different diverse range of oversaturated colors and undersaturated colors, and it tends to give me a headache. So again, this mode is not accurate. I think it's a pretty interesting effect for movies, and I even liked it, although some of the colors seemed a little off. But I noticed that it looks very odd in the general UI of the phone, because half the colors look like they're full saturation, and other ones look like they're undersaturated, and it's not practical. Now the same thing still applies with standard mode, where I'm noticing that there still aren't enough reds. Sometimes people's faces look too bluish or greenish. As for the last two modes, the professional mode and the dynamic mode, the professional mode seems to have all the troubles of the standard mode. It just has a warmer white point. And the dynamic mode, don't even get me started. That's the most overprocessed, horrible, oversaturated piece of junk I've ever seen. But in the real world, besides some colors looking off, especially skin tones, and oversaturation if you're using standard mode, it's not a bad experience, and a lot of people will like this display and the effects that they're seeing. Aside from some downfalls with Samsung's calibration, the only other thing about this display that some people need to pay attention to is that it is capable of getting burn-in, what is called blue subpixel burn-in. So right now I am underneath the dialer, and if I hit star pound 0 star pound, it brings me into a diagnostic mode where I can look at red, green, and blue. These are the three colors that make up every color that you can see. So with blue, if you are somebody who is texting all the time, somebody like me, where I'm texting sometimes hours and hours throughout the day, I start to see a slight burn-in line. Yes, even now, I've only had this phone for 2 weeks, and I can perceive very, very slightly already that there is just a bit of burn-in that is starting already where that status bar is. That status bar is always there whenever you are navigating the phone or just using a phone on a daily basis. What I will see eventually, I am sure, is the keyboard. I will probably start to be able to make out some lines. When I had my Galaxy Note 2, I had taken longer to review it, longer than 2 weeks, and I had actually seen full keys that I could make out inside of blue. So when I was playing some games, some fast-moving games like Granny Smith, if you have burn-in lines, if something is moving quickly across your display, you can see it almost like a screen, that there's a line here or there's lines there. So that's a major major downside of AMOLED because all those pixels are like miniature little teeny tiny LEDs, and LEDs do burn out eventually, and blue is most susceptible to burn-in because it is the most high energy wavelength, and so it has the shortest lifespan. So no, I can tell already that when using this a lot, this arrangement that this display has does not keep it from burning in. It is so slight that it's even hard to show you. It's something that I can perceive right now when moving it around, but it's not something I can fully see yet. But after several months from now, as heavy of a texter as I am, I'm sure I'm going to start to see the keyboard among other things. So I mostly prefer LCD screens because of this. But if you're somebody who's not texting all the time and you're just using your phone like a normal person and not like a maniac like me, then you may never see burn-in ever. Now moving on to the cool features of the phone, the first thing that I want to start with is the S Pen. Let's start with S Note. This is the new and improved S Note. So whenever you create a note, it's going to have a cover that you can customize yourself. If you go underneath settings, you can edit your cover. If you choose all, they give you a bunch of different presets. Or you can choose images from your own gallery, whatever you'd like. And then of course you can name it as well. Then if you pull downward, you can see a preview of all of your pages. You can select a page and it will bring you inside, or you can simply just click on the cover and it will bring you inside. There are a lot of features inside of here, and I'm really loving what they've done with S Note. I think this will be great, especially for college students. I would have loved to have the suite that it has now. So clicking on this, you can see one of the features is you can have a pen playing type of view. Let's do that again. It's called Record Sketch. I think that's a pretty cute little feature. This can probably be useful if you're trying to do instructions or show where you're going or how to get somewhere on a map. This is simply accomplished inside of editing mode. From the menu, you can get to Record Sketching. And you can see here that I was able to record, and then in the end I was able to add a heart. So you can go ahead and draw something and play it, and then you can edit it later and continue drawing and making it more intricate as time goes by. So this is very cute. You're also able to import your own pictures, and you can edit them, you can rotate them, you can go inside of the Properties tab and mess around with it on a scale if you would like to. I can then choose a frame to go around my image of any kind that I would like included inside here. You can create your own frame as well. They've just got settings galore. You can also add something from inside of Scrapbook that you've already created. So this is something that I took from inside my scrapbook. You can also use your pen to write out formulas. I used 3x plus 2y equals 2. Hopefully that'll recognize that. And they change things around a little bit, so you don't have a specific mode that makes formulas. Instead, you now use your lasso tool. I'm just going to go around this, and it's going to say transform. It says into what? I'm going to say formula, and hopefully it gets it correct. Yes, so it says 3x plus 2y equals 2. We've also got some calculus and a quadratic formula inside of here. And all of this was done by hand and then changed with the formula. So again, that's quite awesome for students, especially math students. I'm sure I would have used this all the time during my calculus days. If only they had such a cool thing back then. Again, you can use your lasso tool for all kinds of things, including selecting your own handwriting. I can hit transform and I can say transform into text, and it takes it and says derp. And I did the same with we. And then you can take a smiley face and then you can transform it again, and you can turn it into a shape, and it makes it more of a uniform shape. So there are a lot of fun things that you can do with this. What's great is that even with your lasso tool, after you've already edited something, you can go under properties. If I want to go underneath line, I can go ahead and change the color of the text anytime I feel like it. If I am drawing things, I can bring things to front, I can send to back, I can change the width and the height. So this is a really, really awesome tool, and this barely just scratches the surface. You can add everything inside of here, from voice memos, you can add videos, you have easy chart, you can make charts in here very easily. You can basically create Excel type things. They give you a bunch of illustrations that you can include. You can put things from your clipboard. You can see their scrapbook maps, which I showed you with that screen recording sketching. You can use that. And then you've also got idea sketch. So you can say dog, and it's going to find something like dog. So this was something from the Note 2. So this is fantastically awesome, a great tool. If you're somebody who's creating a lot of notes and a lot of things that accumulate on your phone, you can go ahead and add a tag. and just say that it was a certain time of year, or there's something going on, or there's some type of words inside here that you want to remember. I just called this tennis. I just tagged this with tennis. Now if I go out and hit menu, it's going to bring you into Samsung's S Finder. Then you can go underneath search, and if you save that document, make sure that you save your documents. If I go in and say tennis, it's going to pull up under S Note where I had tagged tennis. So here I tagged tennis underneath this test I was making, and indeed it works quite well. So that's very, very nice as a feature. You can also make index pages, you can add templates, you can change your backgrounds, you can add types of grids, all in order to keep yourself organized and to make documents as you need them when you need them. So this is very, very cool. Of course, let's not forget all those nifty new features of the S Pen suite. You just need to hold down your S Pen and click on this button here to execute it. So we're going to try Action Memo first. I really like this. One of the reasons that I get a Galaxy Note, or I like the Galaxy Note line, is that I actually do use my S Pen. Just say that I'm in a phone call and somebody is giving me some information, like a phone number and an address. I like to be able to write it down. The one thing is that once you write it down somewhere in a text area on a phone, it's kind of a pain to get that number and somehow put it inside of the dialer. So Samsung has simplified this, and it actually recognizes handwriting quite well. I've got terrible handwriting, so we're gonna say 858-333-3333. Sad thing is that this is my true handwriting. I'm not just doing this for demonstration purposes only. My friend Natalie makes fun of me. She calls my script, trust me, I'm a doctor. So yeah, thanks for that, Natalie. So we have this number here, and just say that they've given me an address as well. Let's just put 123 Hickory Street. Hopefully it will recognize that. So what you do next is you hit link to action. You see that it has selected the entire area. You don't have to select the entire area. You can then hit right here and go ahead and circle just what you need. So you see it's now recognized it as something. You have the option then to recognize it and put it inside of the dialer. You can use it underneath contacts, messaging, email. You can search for this on the web. You can search for the address underneath maps, and also put it inside of your tasks. Just say you're writing out a grocery list or whatever. So we're going to go ahead and say inside dialer, and you can see that even this phone recognizes my poor handwriting, 858-333-3333, and it doesn't have a problem at all. What's also nice is that this application keeps itself minimized. You can see this box here. I can go easily back into it to say when I'm done making that phone call. I can either decide to save it, I can also change the background color, and then of course I can go ahead and recognize my street name. Let's see if it'll do it. We're gonna go underneath maps, and it's gonna look up 123 Hickory Street. It actually found it! And wherever this is, 123 West Hickory Street, usually it will give you a set of options of, did you mean this or that? But you can see this works very, very well. So we're going to go back into it. I'm gonna say save, and it saves it underneath my action memos, and I can go underneath the action memo application and see all my action memos for later. And then I can recognize anything I'd like to later. So I really find this useful. The next one that we have is called Scrapbooker. This is something that I actually have been using. I'm supposed to be making my Ninja Turtles duct tape wallet like I mentioned in my mini review of the Galaxy Note 3. I haven't had a chance to do that, but I have advanced a little bit more on how to use this. So here I found a set of duct tape wallet instructions. I can go ahead and activate Scrapbooker. So what it will let me do is allow me to circle this entire web page here. And what you can see right there, it said it only allows you to have 3,000 characters. So what it does is it captures just that screen that you had seen, and then the rest of it, it's going to convert into 3,000 characters of text. So even though it doesn't save the whole web page up and down, you still have a majority of that web page in text. I can then go ahead and classify it underneath duct tape wallets. I can add a memo of some kind. Yay! Exclamation point. And I can hit check and check, and it has now saved it to my scrapbook. So we're gonna go underneath scrapbook, and this is my duct tape wallet category. You see I've got my instructions. I also can get back to it. Since it doesn't have the entire page, I can easily click this link, and if I'm connected to the internet, I can easily get back to whatever it was I was looking at. And there's my memo, and you can see that I've collected various pictures. You've also got the ability to go underneath YouTube. You can activate Scrapbooker, and then when you're underneath a YouTube video, you just need to circle it, and it actually gives you a playable video that you can play inside of here, but of course only if you're connected to the internet. And you can see that the video actually plays. Now this application was having a little bit of trouble with the newer YouTube application, so I ended up having to backdate the application by just uninstalling updates. So if this is giving you any trouble and isn't recognizing it as a video but rather just an image, just go underneath applications and uninstall updates and it should work just fine until Samsung fixes this. But I find this great that I can save everything in one concise place. Also with Scrapbooker, just say that I'm on the internet and I find an example that I really like. I can either hit Scrapbooker and I can circle the picture and it's going to take the entire picture for me and it's going to make a new post inside of Scrapbook. But just say that I don't want this entire image. What you can do is also hold down this button and you can easily just trace around whatever it was that you wanted only, and then you let it go. And you can see it cuts it out for you, it lassos it for you. You can use the subtraction tool, and now you can see that it has only selected the area that is the image. Now once I have it perfectly selected, I can go ahead and share it with various options here. Or I can also save it underneath my scrapbook again. And there it is, it has cut it out perfectly, just the cute little picture I wanted, and of course it included the link that it came from. So let's go ahead and hit duct tape wallets, and now it's saved under the proper category. I think that this is a really good application for college students or for people who do a lot of projects. This is something that I will indeed use. I do a lot of projects all the time. I am a very artsy, craftsy type of person. I also do a lot of research. So if I can go on the internet and have everything in a concise place that I can get to and save it underneath my phone and then get to it from a link, even a YouTube video, this is very, very practical, and I think they did a great job here. Another feature that I really like is called Screen Write. It's pretty much like the Galaxy Note 2, but I think it's more easily accessible now. So just say that you're on the internet and you want to write on a page, or you took a screen cap and you want to write on the page. So here we have a battery life screenshot from the Galaxy Note 3. I can hit Screen Write and it's going to capture the screen, and then from right here it's very easy for me to write on here. You know, it's got okay battery life. I really like that it's very accessible to take notes and to write on them right here immediately as I'm looking at it. It takes away any extra steps of having to take screenshots and save it in the gallery, and then opening it up inside of an editor and then being able to write on it. So I think it's quite handy if you're looking at maps or anything, you're trying to instruct something or annotate something, so this works very well as well. You've also got a lasso tool, so you don't have to save the whole entire image. You can use a rectangle figure, or it can just be something in particular that you want. And here I have it underneath edited images. We've also got S-Finder, which I find to be quite useful, especially if you start tagging things in the phone. You can get to it just by clicking it from here, or you can hit and hold down the menu button and it brings up S-Finder as well. And you can easily search the internet or anything on the phone within a time period or something that has a tag. On a non-TouchWiz phone, if you hold down the menu button, it's going to bring up Google Now, Google Search, but they have skinned it here, and if you really don't like this, you can use a different launcher like Nova Launcher, and it will get rid of this, so that when you do hold down the menu button, it will bring up Google Search and not S-Finder. So that's just a side note there. This last one is called Pen Window, which I really like. The only thing is that you can't access Pen Window with anything but the S Pen. That's something that I wish they would have enabled people to do, is to use Pen Window without having to actually use the pen. So when you hit on Pen Window, all you need to do is to draw a little rectangle or a box or whatever, and they give you a couple of applications that you can choose. You can use the internet browser. They have gotten rid of pop-up browser, which was on the Galaxy Note 2, and they have used it now with Pen Window. I'm not so okay with that, because I like to have pop-up browser and I don't like having to use the pen all the time here. But this phone is called the Note, and if you get this phone, they probably are expecting you to use your pen, so whatever. Let's go ahead and have a calculator as well. You can have several open at the exact same time. It's also a kind of multitasking. And I can resize this if I would like. I can drag it around. I also have the ability to expand it into a full app. I can also hit the minus sign and it turns it into a little itty bitty thing that I can hide and keep out of the way. What I find this super useful for is if you are carrying on throughout your day using your phone and you're chatting at the exact same time. I would use this underneath Candy Crush Saga. Just say that I'm playing and I don't want to be bothered and I don't want to have to check notifications. I can keep this little window open, and I do have full access to my keyboard. It's a full working chat window, and if I don't want it in the way anymore, I can simply hit the minimize button and there it is, it's out of the way, and I can continue playing. And then if I get another message or I'm ready to answer, I just hit on that little bubble, and there you have it. I can then start typing la 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 la, ta-da, and minimize it and continue playing. So I think that they did a very good job with this. It's very well optimized. The only thing is that you have to use the S Pen. And for this particular feature, that doesn't make all that much sense, because once you tap this, you're brought up with the keyboard, and unless you're using swipe, you're gonna want to use your fingers. So good implementation, Samsung, but it doesn't make much sense to only be able to use this feature if you're using the pen. Now, of course, we can't forget about all the features that the Galaxy S4 already had. They are now on the Galaxy Note 3, so if there was anything that you fancied with the Galaxy S4, here it is, right here underneath Controls, inside of the Galaxy Note 3. You've got settings for your S Pens, you've got settings for one-handed operation, which I find is actually pretty interesting. There is one setting that you go underneath and you say use for all screens, adjust the scale and position of all screens by swiping the edge of the screen. This is so that with one hand you can actually use the entire phone for everything, literally. So to activate this, you go like this, you swipe, and look what it does. It minimizes the entire touch whiz, and you can actually navigate about the phone. I still have really tiny little hands, but I could see this as being practical for some people. You can control every little part of the phone right from here. You can access the menu, you can get to the home screen, and then you just need to click to expand it again, and voila. Also, of course, you can use this for keyboard. They also have one for calculator, and there's one-handed unlock patterns. So I think that they implemented this properly. I really like this. You've also got the full range of S4 motion controls, air gesture, air view, air command, which is with the S Pen. You've got all your motion controls that I started seeing in the Galaxy S3, Palm Motion, Smart Screen, and also increased touch sensitivity. So this is absolutely chock full of features. And of course, from the Galaxy Note 2, we have multi-window. This is like multitasking that you can use instead of pen window or with pen window. So you've got select applications. You can't just choose anything that you want, but they have added a new feature. Just say that there is a group of applications that you are using all the time together. You can save it in a profile. So just say that you're somebody who's using Scrapbook at the same time as S Note. I was able to save this as a preset, and you can see it is S Note/Scrapbook. You can do that with any of these on here. So I am just absolutely overwhelmed with the amount of features that's included on this device. Now, looking underneath the hood and what drives this phone, it has the Snapdragon S800 SoC. You've got 4 Crate 400 cores clocked at 2.3 GHz, and it's also got the new Adreno 330 GPU. My experience with this phone is that it is incredibly smooth except for the S lag, that famous little tiny micro lags or jank that you get here and there, pretty much all over the system. For me personally, it hasn't been as laggy as the Galaxy S4, but it's something that people constantly make fun of in terms of touch whiz. Still, this guy has just under 3 GB of actual usable RAM, and there are so many things that you can do on here without ever missing a beat. Now, when it comes to benchmarks and where Samsung competes in that, it's been found out that they cheat a little bit on certain benchmarks, but it's also been found out lately that other OEMs do the exact same thing. So for example, we have System Monitor right here. I'm going to pull up a little window that sits as an onlay, and we're going to go and find Quadrant to make a point. If you look at the CPU right now, you can see it's only using one core, but as soon as I hit Quadrant, for example, it's going to bounce upward to using all 4 cores, and they're going to be maxed out. So at least all the other devices across the line are doing pretty much the exact same thing, so it doesn't feel as cheap here. It's really not telling you what's actually going on with the phone. So in terms of actual use of the phone, when they're cheating like this, it really doesn't give you the entire story of what's actually going on and how this phone will behave had it not been locked to having full frequency on all 4 cores. You can see that it's just sitting here with absolutely nothing happening, and it's maxing to the full frequency. It's really a rotten move that OEMs are doing this, and if you want to see the true behavior of the benchmark, you can rename the APK so that the phone can't recognize it anymore as Quadrant. What I can say about this phone is it's never using barely ever 4 cores. If I'm exiting out of an application, just for example, it will have all 4 cores running, but it bounces right back downward. Typically during something like gameplay, I see only 3 cores active at a time, and they're running at about no more than about half of its max frequency. We've got Need for Speed Most Wanted running up here. You can see that it's only hitting 1.2, pretty much max over 3 cores. You've got the CPU running calculations alongside the GPU. What I'm noticing with this device is it's pretty smooth. I do see some frame drops here and there. What I also tended to notice is that with the Z Ultra, that was pretty much the smoothest experience that I've had thus far. It seems that the more cores that are active and the lower the frequency between the cores, that you end up getting some frame drops and jitter. On the Z Ultra, during gameplay, it only has 2 cores active at one time, and they're running pretty much max at 2.2 gigahertz. And I noticed that that really contributes to a very, very fast experience. So while this does have very great gameplay, and I'm not complaining, I think still that the Z Ultra is probably the smoothest gameplay experience that I've had thus far. Still, this is a great device. It's very smooth. Gameplay is pretty awesome as well. But still, for me, it is not as smooth as the Z Ultra that only has its 2 CPU cores running at its max 2.2 gigahertz. Some other things that I am noticing about the phone is that during gameplay it gets quite hot to the touch. I played a lot with the G2 and even the Z Ultra, and to me they did not feel as hot as how hot the Galaxy Note 3 gets. This was also a very common problem with the Galaxy S4, which also got pretty hot around the area of the camera, as this is where the SoC lies. So I can say it's pretty normal for this phone to get decently hot during gameplay. I'm not such a fan of that, but it seems it's something that Samsung is doing. I also noticed that gameplay is really a battery hog. It was the same thing with the G2. Just after a couple of minutes of gameplay, I went from 50% down to 46%. So unlike on the Galaxy Note 2 where I could get several hours of gameplay, you're probably not going to get any more than 2 hours of gameplay on this device. But it's the same thing with the other S800s as well. Thoughts, anybody? Particular game times that you're noticing? Now, getting into sound, if one of the things that you liked about the Galaxy Note 2 was the speaker, you're probably not going to be so pleased here. As I mentioned earlier, I don't like the speaker. I honestly don't know if anybody does. I'm glad that it at least gets loud, and if you place the phone down due to the position of the speaker, it's not getting covered up or muffled by a bed. I really doubt that you're going to be missing notifications with this phone. It's anything but quiet. And GPS is also very loud, but the quality sounds thin to me. It doesn't have that full feeling of the Galaxy Note 2. It's alright as a speaker. It's super loud, but overall it's a little bit of a disappointment when comparing it to what we had before. In terms of musical sound qualities, this is a Qualcomm device, and it also has the Qualcomm DAC because of it, and a lot of people are saying, okay, well, I want to get the Exynos version then, because it probably has the Wolfson DAC inside of it, but no, it doesn't. The Exynos version actually has a Yamaha DAC version inside of it, and as far as I know, there is no version that has the Wolfson DAC inside. Thanks to Mr. Super Curio. When listening to the quality over headphones, this is Voodoo Audio Measurements. You can get this free from the Google Play Store. When testing out U-Dial, I can tell, just like the Galaxy S4, that Samsung is using some type of a poor upsampling algorithm. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing here and what they're upsampling to, but when you have a poor upsampling algorithm, it introduces artifacts that shouldn't be there in the sound. Although interestingly, people are really reporting liking what Samsung has done with the sound on this device, and even looking at some measurements from GSM Arena, it seems that this device has a good signal-to-noise ratio, and through headphones it has low distortion. I think we can leave it up to the audiophiles to be picky about the upsampling algorithm and what Samsung is doing with this. In the case of the Galaxy S4, you could play 44.1 kHz music, and Android automatically wants to upsample it to 48 kHz. So when you take a waveform that looks a particular way and you upsample it to have more samples per second, you have to interpolate the wave so that it looks like the waveform before and not all jagged and weird. But if you use a poor upsampling algorithm, you're not getting a perfect reproduction of that original sound wave, and instead you get artifacts here and there. So I'm curious to what people think about the sound on this. It's a very personal experience sound, and it depends on whether you like it or not. But this phone is capable of playing 192 kHz audio at 24-bit. You can play FLAC and WAV files. I've got myself a FLAC Hotel California. I wasn't able to find it in 192 kHz, but you can see that you can play ultra high quality audio on this thing. Also, what I like about this particular music player are some of the settings. I have found myself to really like the tube amp effect, and you've also got surround sound, small room, large room, and concert hall. By itself, the sound is nice and clear, although I have been listening to the iPhone 5S a lot, and I can say that the iPhone 5S has much more colorful sound, where this feels more flat. So messing around with equalizer settings, such as the tube amp effect, has really given it a full feeling for me that I enjoy. Again, it's up to you with what you think about the audio, but overall I think it's a pretty good experience. Now, when talking about battery life, a lot of people have been raving about the battery life. I see certain reviewers doing things like running the battery, only playing video until it dies. Cool, that's great and all. You can see how long in comparison to other phones that it can actually play until it dies. So that says that Samsung has optimized it to have a long playing video time. But what does that say about actually using the phone in real life? How long is it going to last doing all these crazy things that you do? I know I'm crazy. I do all kinds of things throughout the day. I'm typically able to get a 9 to 10 hour day out of this guy. And the longest screen time I've been able to get is 5 hours and 37 minutes, which is pretty good. It reminds me somewhere around the Galaxy S4, and I can go all night and all day and have still no trouble with running out of battery, and I'm still hitting about 5 hours. But in comparison to something like the Note 2, I was easily able to get 6 hours of screen time out of the Note 2. So for me, this isn't getting quite the battery life of the Note 2. And also, I was noticing that the G2 had also gotten over 6 hours of screen time, and I've only been able to hit 5 hours and 37 minutes max on this guy. Now, if you're not a maniac like me who uses my phone as a mobile office and for everything that I do throughout the day, it's very possible that you're going to be able to get over a day or maybe 2 days of battery life on this guy. So with the 3,200 milliamp hour battery, it does pretty good. It's going to last you through the day. If you're playing a lot of games, it seems to kill it pretty quickly. But honestly, this battery life doesn't have the oomph that the G2 did. I really wish, like with the Note 2, that they put battery life as a priority and didn't just boost it 100 milliamp hours. But again, unless you're a heavy gamer, it's going to last you throughout the day, no problem. So overall, I can't complain. Random wallpaper change. Now getting into connectivity, this guy is capable of LTE depending on the market. Of course, if you get the Exynos version, you're not going to have LTE. You will just have the dual carrier HSPA+, although this also has dual carrier HSPA+. That means on 3G, if your carrier supports dual carrier, you can get a 3G data stream going down at a max of 42 megabits per second. So dual carrier is just taking 2 data streams of 21 megabits per second and it's combining it so you get a faster speed or bandwidth. As far as reception and data speeds on this phone over 3G or 4G, that really is going to depend on your area and also on your carrier and also on your internet provider for Wi-Fi. So that part is always very subjective. But at least for me, with my T-Mobile Note 3, I am in a very, very low reception area and I'm not having much trouble at all. They're only giving you 4 bars, which really doesn't tell you so much, but I'm at least getting 75% reception, so I am very pleased with the reception I am getting so far with the Galaxy Note 3. What I'm not so impressed with right now is Wi-Fi. Here is my router right here, and for some reason I am seeing reported all over the internet the Note 3 just has some issue being stable and staying connected to a network, or it wants to switch around a lot. I have my router right upstairs, pretty much just above me. There is no excuse. I don't have trouble on any other phone, but all the time it's dropping out, or it's saying that I have a very slow, unstable connection, which I know is not true because every other device is just fine. So if you're somebody who is experiencing this, it looks like it's about every single version so far that seems to be affected with this issue. I'm hoping that Samsung is able to fix this with some type of ROM update. You can just hit the menu button, go underneath Advanced, and then you can see there is Auto Network Switch. Some people are reporting better stability with Auto Network Switch. I myself just found out about this. I was just complaining here and there, myself thinking, ooh, that's weird. But then to see everyone else is actually having this issue as well, I'm gonna try out Auto Network Switch and see how that works for me. But for many, this seems to solve the problem. And if it doesn't for you, let's just hope that there's a firmware update. I'm also noticing on the T-Mobile version that there are some bugs with the GPS navigation. I don't know if this is something that's going on with all the firmwares, international included, or if this is T-Mobile really messing things up. When I am using GPS navigation, sometimes the phone just freezes, and instead of restarting itself, it just sits there getting hot. I was simply just trying to drop some mail off at a post office, and I thought it was telling me where I was supposed to be going because it was just supposed to be on a straightaway on one particular street, and the phone froze. And I had no idea that I kept driving in the same direction, not knowing that I had already passed the post office miles before. So that wasn't cool. I'm probably pointing fingers at T-Mobile here. If I can, I'm going to be installing the international ROM on this guy. Instability for the GPS is really not okay. If anybody has anything to add about this, I'm very, very curious. In terms of Bluetooth, we have Bluetooth 4.0 on this guy. Bluetooth has been a joy to use. I have had very good reception with Bluetooth. I can wear my Galaxy Gear up 2 floors in my house, and I am still able to be connected to my phone without a single problem, so it looks like Bluetooth is working pretty well. It's Bluetooth 4.0. It's also got low energy, so that you can keep a device such as this tethered and not completely kill the battery. Thus far, I do see that the Galaxy Gear is pulling a little bit of power from the battery, but it's not terribly extreme to where I can't keep the Galaxy Gear connected all day long. So I am a very big fan of low energy Bluetooth 4.0 and being able to connect it to peripheral devices. Now, in terms of call quality, it's been actually pretty clear for me. Some people on the Sprint network have been complaining that there have been some issues with garbled sound on their devices. That's not something that's happening with all the devices. That seems that it's something that is confined to Sprint. But otherwise, I have found call quality to be quite nice. Also, the speakerphone is quite loud, as I was mentioning about the speaker before. It's just not the nicest sounding speaker. But it works well as a phone! Yippee! Now, how about all of you people out there who like to root your phone or install a custom firmware? I'm going to go ahead and get into download mode for Odin. Now, let's check out a couple of things here. This says Knox warranty void. It says 00. Now, people have been in a frenzy lately because if you flash a custom recovery or a custom ROM, this counter, which I would actually call a flag because it's not actually a counter that's going to keep increasing anytime you flash a custom firmware or a custom recovery, it's just going to go from 0, 0 to 0, 1. And this has been making people incredibly nervous because what's speculated is that Samsung is using what we call an eFuse. So if there is an eFuse, what that means is that if you want to make your phone look like it wasn't ever tampered with, just say for warranty reasons or repairs, you could always use something like Triangle Away because it went in software-wise and turned back the counter by hand, almost like an odometer, and it made it look like you had never tampered with the device. Well, Samsung has supposedly gotten more tricky here, releasing an eFuse. So if it is indeed an eFuse, that means that once you flash a custom ROM or a custom recovery, that means that you can't go backwards. You can't fix it. This is going to say void forever. Now, what has further been speculated is whether this is just a new detection method to see whether Knox has been compromised, because Knox is used for enterprise. So basically, Knox is supposed to keep enterprise information completely separate from everything personal that you have on your phone. It's almost like a completely different profile. Those informations don't ever touch each other. They're completely separate. So for enterprise, that's great. But the speculation is this just a way to see if somebody has tampered with their phone, or there are no consequences for rooting your phone or doing other things, or does it in fact void your warranty? So for right now, it's all just speculation. Even myself, I haven't gotten a clear word from Samsung. All I get from my certain channels is that we don't know yet if it's just a detection method or if it indeed has some consequences in terms of warranty. And even then, that can't count for all markets. So at this point, it's very hard to say. But if you're somebody who's wanting to just root your device, we do have a root method now. It's called Root de la Vega, which was initially for the AT&T version, and it allows you to root your phone without tripping the Knox warranty flag. So I expect to see other little tricks and bits over time, so we're not completely screwed. But nonetheless, this is pretty frustrating. Also, if you are somebody who is worried about region locking, Chainfire has created Region Lock Away, so you can stick it to the man and go ahead and use your phone wherever you want to. Alrighty, let's get into the camera. First, I'm going to be talking about the interface, and then I'm going to be showing you some video samples and some picture samples. This is a 13 megapixel sensor. We've got a single LED flash. This is not optical image stabilized like a lot of other good phones out on the market. I really don't know why Samsung is not adding optical image stabilization. If you end up using your phone in low lighting, optical image stabilization really helps eliminate that motion blur. It's also great when recording video, so I don't know why they don't have this on this phone. Now, you do have digital image stabilization, but if you are going to be using 4K or recording in 4K, there is no digital image stabilization option whatsoever. So if you're somebody who is wanting to use this phone and to zoom in and then having a 1080p crop, that's really not going to work so well because it's just going to look jittery and moving about, and it will be very largely unusable unless you have a tripod or some type of a mount for this. So that's a big bummer there, Samsung. Now, getting into the camera interface, we're going to start off on the left-hand side. If you hit this button, it's going to switch between the front and the back camera. This allows the dual camera or the dual recording. So here I am. Hello. And if I hit this, it's going to switch it, so I can switch the view. I can then move this around, change the size. This is something that we're all seeing a lot of lately. Down here is the gallery. I can hit this thumbnail and it will take me into the gallery to look at all my pictures and content. And if you hit the wheel again, it's going to take you into the actual settings for the camera, for video, or basic settings. So underneath the camera settings, we have photo size. You have an option of 13 megapixels for 3 aspect, 9.6 megapixel 16:9, and so on and so forth. You've got options for burst shot, tap to take photos, face detection. You've got metering, which is really nice, helps with setting proper exposure during focusing. You can control the ISO and smart stabilization, and there's an option for saving as rich tone only for HDR. Underneath here, you can control your video size. For video size, this is the option for 4K resolution. This is only inside of the SnapDragon versions of this phone. Now it says attention, you can record videos at 4K. It says, however, you cannot record in dual camera mode or take pictures while recording, so just keep that in mind. You do lose those abilities if you use 4K over 1080p. So then you have 1080p, also 16:9, and you've got some other various options as well. Now there you can see I have it set as 4K or Ultra HD right now, and video stabilization is off, but once we go back down to 1080p, you immediately have this back. And right here it looks like we have some type of a ripoff of LG's audio zoom as well. Under regular settings, you have a choice for location tag, review image. You've got volume key for your zoom key, or you can set the volume key to various other things such as the camera key or recording. You've got your camera, white balance, exposure. You've got guidelines to compose your images, choice for your flash, voice control, contextual file name, and other basic settings. Now, as far as your quick settings, you just need to hold down on one of them. You can see and choose from various options right here. An interesting thing with this camera is that there is no longer a night mode. That has made some people angry, although I feel like they have substituted this with smart stabilization. Smart stabilization says automatically adjust the camera in low light to give you brighter, clearer pictures without the flash. What I am noticing is that Samsung has programmed this guy to have longer exposure times than I would expect for some things. When you do that, it's easy to move and have some motion blur. So I'm noticing just in normal settings, I went into the store and was just taking some pictures of random things, and I noticed that a lot of the time my pictures came out a little bit blurry. I would have to take pictures a couple of times, and if I took images indoors, I noticed that this didn't do so well. So if you're going to use this camera on a daily basis until Samsung gets a clue and pays attention to the fact that a lot of images are coming out blurry in certain circumstances other than perfect daylight, I recommend keeping smart stabilization on to take pictures. I can't tell you how many pictures I have ruined already because there's a little bit of motion blur. So that wasn't so smart, Samsung. And if you touch this from the bottom, you have the options for several real-time effects. Of course, if you're going to be using the dual recording mode, this gives you the option to choose several different types of frames. Then on the right-hand side, we are presented with the video camera. Once you're inside of the video camera, it just immediately starts recording. You can pause from here, which is always very nice because I can go to a different location and hit record again without ever having to start a new video clip. Then I can just hit stop. Hitting the camera key is pretty self-explanatory, and we've also got a bunch of different modes. There's a couple of new ones in here as well. We've got automatic mode. In the Galaxy S4 review, I covered beauty face. I think that it works pretty well. It just smooths out blemishes on your face. You've got best photo, allows you to save the best photo that you've taken. You've got best face, same concept. Takes 5 consecutive pictures and then you can choose the best faces and superimpose them. You've got sound and shot, which allows you to take a picture and then save that picture basically as an MP4. You've also got a drama shot. I remember in my Galaxy S4 review that a biker was going by and I could see a time lapse of him moving. You've got animated photo, lets you create cool little GIF files. I don't think that a lot of people are going to be using this, but basically it allows you to take a picture of a golf swing and then you can pan back and forth inside of that movement. So this is a very specialized, particular fun setting that I don't think very many are going to use. So, okay, cool. You've got rich tone HDR, which takes 3 different exposures, combines them together so that you have a nice dynamic range, shadows, midtones, and highlights. This is a very excellent mode, which they have done pretty well with this phone. If you're somebody who's going to be taking a picture, just say, here's the Grand Canyon. This is a good example. If you're focusing on the Grand Canyon, there's a good chance that the sky could wash out. So using HDR allows you to get the proper exposure for the sky and also for the Grand Canyon. And thankfully in this mode, Samsung has not oversaturated or done crazy things with it. It actually is a very nice result. You've got eraser. Of course, you can get rid of people who have photobombed. Panorama. We've had this for ages. Now you've got surround shot finally. This allows you to take a 360-degree picture to create a spherical panorama. So think photosphere, but still photosphere tops it the best. This one is alright. I think I have an example example somewhere. This is just a random example of me sitting on the couch taking a picture of my computer screen. You can either play through it, and another interesting thing that you can do with it is if you center it however you'd like, it's going to be using the gyroscope so that you can pan through the image. So you can see that I'm able to actually move around. I think that that's actually pretty cool. It doesn't do a terrible job, but I could easily tell that it's not as good as Photosphere. Still, it's nice to see an implementation of these sorts on all different phones, and this is pretty cool. And the last mode is for sports. Take pictures of fast movement. You can have a very quick shutter speed for this. Helps you actually capture an image without motion blur. So you've got a lot of nifty little things under here. So now let's go ahead and take a look at some videos and images, shall we? The first thing that I want to say is that I love these 13 megapixel sensors. Once you go 13 megapixel, you will never go back. There's just so much that can be seen. The details are so clear and so intricate. Also, I'm glad that the colors are not terribly horribly oversaturated. I think that Samsung did quite nice overall with processing. Now here's an image without HDR, and the image that does have HDR, I was very happy to see that it is not oversaturated, and it does a very good job here. Samsung has managed to make the colors overall look pretty natural, so no complaints here. Lots of detail, pretty nice colors, yay! Where I do have some complaints is when I take pictures indoors. It seems like it's so hard to take a picture that isn't blurry. I feel that if they were to increase the shutter speed a little bit and also increase the sensitivity to light in various indoor situations, that we could avoid some of the motion blur that we are seeing. Although yeah, I'm sure they're trying to avoid noise, but it's pretty pathetic that half my pictures come out blurry. Even though I have had some issues with motion blur, I still have been able to get some pretty nice results. Even in low lighting. Here in this low lit macro image, it looks actually really nice, and I only see a little bit of grain. And after using the smart stabilization setting, I was really quite pleased with the low lighting results I got. Now I don't know if it's the camera or just me, but I have much better time taking macro shots without having some type of motion blur inflicted. So I can say if you're not somebody who has a steady hand, I would probably just use the smart image stabilization and be done with it. Now with the video camera, even though you have various modes for slow motion at 120 frames per second, or smooth motion which records video at 60 frames per second, which is incredibly smooth, what fascinates me most about this camera is the 4K. The 4K resolution is insane. What fascinates me is just about any still frame that you see in a 4K video looks just like an HD image. It's funny because some of the stills I am looking at from the 4K video look even better than the 13 megapixel picture that I took in the exact same environment. Taking 4K video and scaling it down to 1080p just looks gorgeous. It looks like the way 1080p is intended to be. To see the full resolution examples of the 4K videos that I am showing in this review, I'm going to link them to my Google Plus in the description. You just need to go onto Google Plus and download the original video, and then you can play it in 4K. If your computer can't handle it, I recommend just taking it and dragging and dropping it into the Chrome browser, and it will play it at full speed just fine. Go away.
Oh, that's nice. It's a nice bowl.
So thank you everybody for watching. This has been Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Please also visit my website, angeleftech.com. I also have a Facebook. You can check out the links in the description. I usually answer a lot more on my Facebook as I'm more available there. So if you have questions and I post something, you can ask on there as well as my forums. I gotta tell you the truth here. In the beginning, I was not such a fan of the Galaxy Note 3. I wasn't too happy with the display. I was a little bit bogged down and bothered because of the bugs. But honestly, after using this for several weeks, I am now using this as my daily driver. It has kicked my Z Ultra out of its place, especially because with this device I don't have to worry about not being able to watch Netflix without having to have the Bravia engine on. So this is a device that I did not really like so much at first, but has actually really grown on me. I really love the S Pen. I think that all the features have been integrated very well. My boyfriend and I have been looking at houses and apartments, and I've even been able to save houses and stuff inside of the scrapbook so that I can look through all of my stuff and reference it later on. It's a very quick, snappy device, except for some of that S lag. Yes, that does happen. Plus, in other videos, I am reviewing the Galaxy Gear, and I really actually love the Galaxy Gear. Pairing both of these together, I really have loved the experience. After playing around with it with the new additions of the S Pen and the ability to record in 4K, I think that this is a good upgrade from the Galaxy Note 2. I like the look of this, I like the feel of this, and I especially love this faux leather feel on the back. It is quite different from how the white one feels, so if you're really wanting a premium feeling version of the Galaxy Note 3, I would go with the black one. This is a great little device. Yes, I do recommend it as an upgrade, especially if you want a slightly bigger display. For me, as I mentioned before, the sweet spot is about 6.4 inches, but really in terms of watching media, this is not bad at all. If any of you have any questions or concerns, please ask them in the comments section below. And please let me know your experience with this device. I'm really not so happy with some of the bugs. I hope that they get sorted out, especially that Wi-Fi issue. And I don't care about the Knox security thing. I'm going to flash willy-nilly whatever I feel like. So this guy is a worthy plunge. Have a good night, everybody.